Hey, it's Chris. We all have crowdfunding games that we love. And I love talking about great crowdfunding games, but how many crowdfunding games have you backed that you have been sorely disappointed by in one way, shape, form, or the other? I have definitely had more than my fair share as someone who covers a ton of crowdfunding because, I've done a ton of crowdfunding. Let's talk for a second. Let me run you through 10 that left me completely lacking. Let's do this. So we're going to get right into it. Not a whole lot of a preamble today. Number freaking one. This is going to surprise no one on this list if you watch my channel at all. Etherfields. I really wanted Awaken Realms to blow me out of the park with this, right? Like, I was not a big fan of Seventh Continent. I sold it shortly after getting it. It fell completely flat. I said Awaken Realms, sci-fi, fantasy-esque, adjacent, scope, awesome miniatures, narrative storytelling. Disappointment after wave 1. And then, like 2 years later, we get wave 2. And so I get everything all at once and I go, wow, okay. I ignored everything this whole time so that I could experience it myself, trying to stay away from as much bias on this card-driven, deck-building-esque Marvel Champions resource management in your hand style of game with hidden secrets everywhere. And boy howdy, did that fall flat. Boy howdy, was I disappointed. Boy howdy, did they not really make it a 2.0. That was one of my biggest criticisms in my review was, this is supposed to be 2.0? Like, how much time was spent trying to make this better and just didn't? Like, that game screamed to me like a lot of Awaken Realm games have. Where is the playtesting that is, okay, I'm going to give you the rule book, here's the game, try and play it. I don't know. It feels like a lot of Awaken Realm games have never had that happen. And that is the biggest problem. If somebody else can't just play your game or pick it up and understand how to play it, maybe not play it well, those are two different things, like, that's a big sign that you're not doing something right. When there's so much ambiguity, right? It's not one thing. I don't need somebody to teach me how to play it. The whole point of it is I should be able to flip open a rule book with the game out in front of me and learn how to play. Again, people in the comment section, I know you're gonna be like, well, you can just watch it played, or you can just, before you play it, or whatever, your poison, John Gets Games, whatever it may be, right? Paul Grogan. No. They do a great service, but as a game publisher, that should be unnecessary, especially if your medium of how you learn is reading instead of auditory. And that irritates me to no end because you can see it in some games, in their way they're set up, in the way they're designed, in the way they're put together, that somebody has been playing it from a single perspective. And again, the mechanisms, it just seemed like they threw in everything under the sun that they could, and it was very disjointed as well. That's enough Etherfields rambling, though. I mean, you're going to get my blood pressure up. Let's go to number 2. Number 2 here. Number 2. I'm just going to pull number 2 down because, good gracious, I'm going to hurt myself. Whoa. Okay, I didn't hurt myself, but I forgot that the premium health chips were sitting on top of that, right? And in case you can't tell what this is, by that, this is Too Many Bones. And you're going, Chris, you backed Too Many Bones on Kickstarter? No, I didn't, actually. I picked this up in a trade locally. But before I played it, I backed Too Many Bones Unbreakable. And boy howdy, am I disappointed in myself. I looked at it and I said, I think I'm going to like this. I think I'm going to like it. And then I've played this a few times. And people talk about the upgrades and the RPG and the unique battle system and the premium upgrades and just Again, we're going to stay with a theme here that I shouldn't have that much trouble reading a rule book, especially for a game that's been out for what, like over half a decade? I mean, it reminds me of Mage Knight, right? When people say, how do I learn how to play Mage Knight? They're like, oh, go watch Ricky Royale's videos, right? Like, that should not be the first thing that comes out of somebody's mouth on how to play a game. It should be go read the rule book because it tells you everything. Again, it was just a massive overhead upkeep that becomes a chore, just like Etherfields, to similarity there. rather than fun. And some people like that. Some people really enjoy that. I am finding myself not to be one of those people, especially when it's not intuitive, especially when there's minutia, especially when there's errata, especially when there is just, you know, this is so different than this and so different than this and so different than this and so different than this. There's no, you know, overarching connection of, you know, one to another necessarily. And so you're having to learn them all individually. And yeah, once you memorize it all, once you've played 10 or 20 hours, it's intuitive, but really? And so Unbreakable is the disappointment, because I'm getting the Unbreakable pledge right now, because if I cancel it, I'm going to lose money. If I get it and just sell it for what I paid, or even less than what they're going to retail it as, given all the bonus content, I'm going to make money, which is, again, irritating, because I don't do this to resell and make money. If I did, I would have bought 3 or 4 Ankh pledges, or I would have bought 3 or 4 Marvel Zombie side pledges and sold them secondary, right? Like, I don't do it for that reason. I can look at crowdfunding on a weekly basis, and if all I wanted to do was make a crowdfunding video that says games you can resell for money, I could do that. I've been doing this long enough. My business acumen is good enough that I could do that a whole video every single week. But that's not the thing I like this hobby for and about. So that's why Too Many Bones, for me, is a big disappointment. And I want to like it. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to give Chip Theory not any thought later. I really want to go into 20 strong. That seems more up my ilk. Will it be? We'll see. But I'm also a little trepidatious now as well. Okay. So now, what's number 3? We're going to stay with, you know, stuff you're going to recognize right away, right? We're going to make this really easy on you guys. Number 3 here, over here, is Myth. Right? This was, you know, very beginning crowdfunding days. I missed the original Myth. Thank you for that. However, I did not miss Myth Journeyman. And that's really what we're talking about here. I went significant on Myth Journeyman. By far and away, one of the larger crowdfunding pledges I've ever done. I mean, I think we're talking probably $400 here. And Myth Journeyman has still not finished fulfilling. Now, whole nother company took over, bought the property, acquired the property, and is in the process of filling the miniatures for it. But the combination of just gameplay, again, that was just lacking. That was just lacking cohesiveness. That was lacking some sort of, this is how you actually play. This is what you actually do here. The term house rule is probably the biggest term that I saw associated with that game, first and second, Myth and Myth Journeyman, when people got it. I actually sold mine, and don't think I actually ended up losing too much money. too much money, he says. Mother of pearl. Still, way more than I like thinking about right now. Again, blood pressure going up. But, you know, maybe someone's going to buy the miniatures off me, you know, when they actually get sent to us in like 2025. And the new company seems to be, you know, they really putting their money where their mouth is. And I give them a lot of credit. They're doing the best they can, and I don't blame them one bit whatsoever. But that was also the campaign that I learned. And this is the number one advice if you get nothing else from this video. Never pledge more than the base pledge. If you are going to do anything pledging wise in a campaign, never do anything more than the base pledge, because I also got burned with a few expansions that I decided after I pledged for the full amount during the crowdfunding campaign, because this is also when I thought stretch goals were somewhat real. Like Santa Claus. Anyway, I decided I didn't want some of them afterwards, and I can't get that money back in the pledge manager. They're not going to refund me it. So sorry, either buy something else that looks better to you now, or just lose that money to pledge manager maybe, or maybe see if you can get it, you know, for shipping costs. That was a tough lesson to learn. That was a really tough lesson to learn. But speaking of the next one, of lessons not learned, right? That's what we're staying with. And we're also saying, as you can see with the majority of these first couple, a lot of plastic, a lot of, maybe not with too many bones, right? Although those chips are plastic. Deluxeifications, if you will. Number 4 here. We're going to go somewhere else, slightly adjacent. We're going to go over here with Street Masters Aftershock. Again, I picked up the original Street Masters in a trade, and it seemed really cool. I was like, wow, this card action combo system, awesome. Blacklist Games is doing another crowdfunding with a whole bunch more new stuff for this. Oh, that's freaking sweet, right? Got my Aftershock pledge, sold it about a week after I got it because I played the base game a little bit more between now and there, and realized that, again, just like the other things on this list, that the rules were just so ambiguous about, okay, well, what happens with this? Well, how does this interact with there? How does this happen? What people are still years out now not getting their Aftershock pledges because they just like kind of ran out. And it seemed like Blacklist Games was using money, to rob Peter to pay Paul, essentially. With a couple of their upcoming crowdfunding campaigns, they did like an Indiegogo one, and they've got a couple other projects with just like the fantasy miniatures that people bought for D&D that like sometimes people got their pledges and sometimes people haven't got their pledges, and there doesn't always seem to be a rhyme or a reason. And it's just left a lot of people not only feeling like they got a game that wasn't fully cooked, but also that it's left a really bad taste in their mouth, especially if you just are one of those people that doesn't get their pledge for, or wondering if you're ever going to get your pledge. I mean, the core system that the Sadlers did with that is great. The implementation of it was mediocre at best. The grid-based system of moving, interacting, your turn, the boss's turn, the cards that you could do to create these awesome combos with a little bit of dice rolling. I mean, it's very, very cool. But ultimately, it just, in combination with the couple other successor games from Blacklist and a couple of the other companies that, they utilized and the mechanics went with, was like Brook City as well. It just never panned out. It's one of those things that worked well up here, but on the actuality down here, it just didn't go. And so I have no qualms about saying, sold that one, made just a little bit of money, and never looked back. I mean, I think they sent out like an upgrade kit because there was like something missing or something wrong with like the Aftershock pledges that they forgot to send with the original pledges. I got that and I trashed it, right? Like I said, I don't even want to think about this again. That's how badly I felt from that standpoint. So there you go. Next up, number 5 here. You're going to recognize this one right away, right? Fireball freaking Island. Restoration Games is taking old games and they're making them new again. Oh my gosh, that's so cool, right? Oh no, isn't it fun when people play on your nostalgia and they try and make you think you need something that didn't stand up back then, but still doesn't stand up now? Like, that's what they've kind of done with a few of these, and especially for Fireball Island. Like, yeah, it's nice. It's kind of gimmicky, and it kind of just has more nostalgia than actual play value. They tried to add a couple more strategic elements, a little more tactical elements, something to mitigate random marbles falling down ways that can't be predicted or ever mitigated. Yeah, they tried to do that. And ultimately, it just... the molds were having trouble, I guess. I don't know, like people's, including mine, just didn't quite fit right between the parts. And then, they made these marble spots that you're putting them on just not big enough. So you would have the constant fear of just brushing adjacently, a feather falling slowly down onto the table and having all your marbles just fall, right? Exaggerating a little bit, but that's kind of what it was. And then they put like a whole bunch of other expansions to give more different ways for marbles and tokens to fall randomly from everywhere. And again, I wanted to play it with my kids and we played it, but the setup every single time, especially as a kids game, it was way too much. And it didn't have any depth of staying power from an adult side of things for me. And so again, I sold it locally. I don't even know. I'm pretty sure I lost money on that one too. Although maybe I didn't, because I sold the expansion that I got with it as well. Whatever, the one came included. Maybe I bought an extra one too. Again, I'm sort of like blacking out these memories because failures these are just being brought up left and right of, oh, look at how we wasted this money, right? Like I don't even want to look behind me and think about things because that'd be a whole nother issue. But most of the time they're behind me because they're actually good and I like them. Anyway, but that was number 5 that I am very okay with not going down the nostalgia route. Nostalgia is a FOMO. Nostalgia is a form of FOMO. So be aware from that side of things. Number six. This is another that I don't have in hand yet, but I'll tell you right now, I already regret backing it. Partially my fault, partially not my fault. Game Found. Lords of Hellas, right? Lords of Hellas, and this is Lords of Ragnarok. The sequel standalone expansion, successor, whatever you want to call it, 2.0 of Hellas. Read the rulebook, played Hellas, have determined after I got Hellas that area control is not my preferred style of mechanistic board game fun, and then got suckered in by Lords of Ragnarok to get the updates. And I swear, to this day still, I canceled my pledge, and it didn't cancel on GameFound, and I got charged. And then the GameFound thing is like, hey, even if it's 24 hours or less after you realize, I mean, it was literally like 3 hours after I get the email that says, hey, campaign finished and you got charged. I'm like, what? You lose like 10%. I was like, well, I can take a cut of like $10 right now, or I can pay $25 or $30 more, get the shipping, and sell it on the retail market for more than what I paid and not lose the money. But you're going to have to wait, I don't know, a year and a half or 2 years to do that. And I decided just to, again, with the unbreakable pledge from Too Many Bones, do the same thing. Just keep it and sell it for a little bit more later. Again, not to make money, but just to say, I don't want to have this huge regret of losing money either at this point. And that's a small, minute difference because it's going to be the hassle of selling it, right? It is, because if I'm going to sell it, I'm going to want to make a tiny bit of money. Not a ton of money, but just a tiny bit, like 10, 20 bucks, you know, just for the time and effort and the expense of dealing with it all. Awaken Realms. Hellas had too many moving parts that were not all equal in terms of the balance of the mechanics of which way you wanted to go in an area control game. Like, I want to go for the victory points this way. I want to go for the victory points this way. I want to go from them this way. And I mean, this is 2.0 of what Tainted Grail is trying to do, right? Smooth out, get rid of those things that people complained about and make it that much better. But is it going to be that much better? If you have Hellas, do you need the second one? Or is it just a 2.0? Like, if you have Hellas and you get Ragnarok, it's just going to completely make it irrelevant. Like, you're never going to play Hellas now that you have Ragnarok. I have no idea. Am I going to play Ragnarok? Maybe review it since I'm going to get it? Maybe I will. But there's a chance that it might be just like Aftershock, where I get it and I immediately just turn it around as well. Because, again, I'm not doing this to chase the hotness or chase the clicks. I'm doing it to play games that I love. And especially doing this review style of things right now, like, I have no shortage of games to play, even though I'm not getting like all of these huge name games or like the pre-advanced copies. Like, I'm still getting plenty of great publisher support, leaving me very, very busy for majority of the time in the last like 3 to 6 months. So we'll see what I want to do with it, and I could see myself going either way, but that's why it's easily on this list as well. Just, you idiot, Chris, you idiot. Anyway, so ultimately responsibility is mine. There you go. Number 7. This one's slightly different. Mini Express. This is basically like an 18xx style train game, only like super streamlined, straightforward, right? You know, build your train lines, buy your stocks, mitigate the prices and how much their value is, depending on how many are there and how many are down here, and you know, just how many tracks are out on the board. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna branch out. You know, when this was going on, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. This looks like something, you know, as an entry point, not like I'm ever going to go, you know, waist deep in that, but just something to broaden my horizons, right? Because you see people playing games like this and you go, am I missing something? You know, you always have that feeling of, I'm missing something because they all like this game. Why don't I like this style of game? Maybe I just need a different one from that aspect of things, right? And that was Mini Express to me. And then I played it. My brain just doesn't work that way. My brain just doesn't work that way. It doesn't. I am not wired in that way. And so for me, that was a disappointment. I think it's a great, I think it's a solid game. I think it's a solid game. It's not for me. It's a solid game for some other people that think that way, that aren't like me. So that's why ultimately it was a disappointment, because I'm more disappointed in myself spending the money, even though I wanted to see if I could. But yeah. If it wasn't a good game, I wouldn't have been able to recoup my costs by selling it on the secondary market, because I did. Because it's well thought of, and it was not a wide print run by any means. And so people wanted it, which is nice, not to, again, lose money, which is a lot of what this list is. That's number 7. Number 8, we're going to go slightly differently here. And this is also one that I got taught a lesson in as well. Runestones. You may not recognize this game, right? This is a queen game, sort of a Feldian queen game where you've got multiple different ways of scoring, of deriving points from, with resource management, a little bit of engine build, tiny bit of asymmetry, and some queen production with queenies, and subsequently 2 other crowdfunding campaigns that had expansions on as well. And that's where I'm going with this, is right, like this was one of those where if I'm in for a pence, I'm in for a pound, right? Where I've got the base game and I kind of like it, and this expansion looks like it's going to make it a little bit better. And you know what? I've got the other expansion, and I think this expansion is going to make it a little bit better. And then I played it with all of them, and there's like 4 different boards. You got the main board, and you got like the 2 or 3 sideboards, and then you've got this way, and 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 this way. And it's like they saw the metaphorical ship sinking in terms of saying, well, you know, it's not quite good enough from this aspect. It's not really good here. And so let's patch it with this expansion. And let's patch it with this expansion. And then, you know, you got Queen with the Queenies, which are like exclusives, which are like actually really hard to get, and they're gameplay elements. So if you don't get them on the crowdfunding a lot of the times, and then I've gone a little bit away from that recently, but especially like 2 or 3 years ago, that was super heavy. It just ultimately was an unfulfilling game. A very generic, unfulfilling resource management Euro game for me. And so I ended up selling it. No, take that back. I ended up trading it on a Board Game Geek math trade and getting something else. I think I actually got like Tigris and Euphrates in return for that, or Samurai, one of those 2. So win-win on that one. I mean, I would have liked to sell it. I prefer a little cash, but I can probably more easily sell Samurai or Tigris and Euphrates now than I could sell Runestones. So math trades, right? Only get burned some of the time in those. Anyway, that's number 8. Number 9. Again, going to be one that you may not have heard of. This is from SidePandemic Games, Tokyo Sidekick. This was one that brought over from Japan. So this wasn't one that, like, you know, they had in-house and created and did. No, it was a Japanese designer that they ported it over into English. And I have mixed feelings about this right now, because it takes like the pandemic cooperative fire putting out gameplay, only adds superhero powers, and you get even your little sidekick, but you're traveling around this board, and the mitigation, it just ramps up at the very end of the game. It sort of does one of these things. Zoosh! And you're kind of like, what just happened there at the end of the game, right? It slowly builds up throughout the game, your powers in terms of unlocking them or upgrading them or getting your deck of how many actions / powers you can take per turn a little bit better. But there's just something missing. Especially as, like, you know, I am a big Japan game folk person. And superhero theme on top of that with a little fantasy, like, you would think that's going down and checking the boxes for me across the board. And so I got a couple of the expansions because SidePandemic Games, some of these are just not widely available, especially the ones that they poured over. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to get this. And I got it. And it's gotten played twice right after I got it. And it's just left me wanting since then. And not wanting to play it again, but just wanting in terms of, do I get rid of it? Do I give it another shot? Do I play it with more people who, you know, are going to play it with me and hopefully like it more than I do? I don't know. It's one of those that's on my trade pile, but I don't know if I could actually pull the trade trigger right now. So it's got this weird dynamic, and it's one of those that I still have tugging on my heartstrings, but can't ultimately decide whether or not it's for me, which ultimately probably decides that the answer is no, because as I say, even with the crowdfunding campaigns, if you're wavering at all, you should probably just say no, because of all the other excellent stuff that you know you like out there, right? Like if I go, okay, I could play Tokyo Sidekick, or I could play The Loop, or I could play another game of Tokyo Sidekick, or I could play Spirit Island, right? Like, is that really a choice? Even, you know, Pandemic Star Wars. Like, I know I like those. So why am I giving so much headspace to a game that I just kind of want to like? Anyway, food for thought as well for you guys. This is my process. Last but not least, we're gonna go with one that, this one's slightly different. This is Ghosts of Christmas from Board Game Tables. This is the import version, the redone, rethematically skinned version of a trick-taking game from Japan that I actually have the original of as well. You know, I got it ordered and sent over from Japan. It probably cost me like $50 total. And then Board Game Tables printed it, you know, about a year later on Kickstarter, and they just kind of made a few tweaks to it as well. And it's a beautiful game to look at. it's a very unique trick-taking game where you can play the tricks out of order, right? You can play first trick, third trick, second trick. You can play third trick, second trick, first trick. You know, you can do it in whatever order you want. But they made this tweak, I feel like, in the rules. And maybe I'm misremembering the base game. And I played it over this summer with my family up at our cottage when we went on our yearly vacation up there. And I played this with like trick-taking people, like people who, you know, play euchre all the time, who play hearts all the time, like things that they're used to in terms of trick-taking. So trick-taking is not the issue. Card game, not the issue whatsoever. It was just this twist on things kind of just raised a lot of eyebrows and a lot of question marks in that sense of, you do what now? Like, it wasn't intuitive, and that was fine that it wasn't intuitive, but it was unintuitive to the point of kind of making it unfun for them. And when other people aren't having fun with a game like that, even if you like it, it sort of also leaves you wanting as well. Because even if I like it now, I have people that really don't like it. And it's not going to be a game that I'm like, hey guys, want to come out and play this one again? So I don't know if it's just me. And I think it's a fine game. But it had too much of a good thing in terms of twist to make it just fall a little flatter with the group, not necessarily even me. So, yeah, there you go. That's what I got. 10. Let me be very clear. This is going to be just part 1 because I easily have another 2 videos to fill up of this right now that I could do. So, there you go. Crowdfunding, Kickstarters that have disappointed me. What's on your list? Do you have stuff that's on your list recently? Do you have stuff that's on your list from a long time ago like I do? Or do you have stuff that's even upcoming like I do that you're looking at already and going, shame? Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comment section down below where you're at and how you're doing. Thanks for tuning in. Stay classy. I have a Patreon for all this sort of stuff too. Thanks, guys. Have a great day. You know, it was almost like they saw the sink. It's almost like they saw the ship. It's almost like they saw the It's almost like they saw the metaphorical sink. It's almost like they saw the metaphorical shimp. You guys will like this in the outtakes.